Well, thank you so much. It's a pleasure to be here. Let's see if I've got this right. Yes, there we go. The present year, 1851, is the year of expectations. So said Punch magazine back in the Victorian era, the height of the Victorian era. Everyone is expecting something. Many of you probably will know what was going on in London, where I'm currently based, in 1851, when it was termed the Year of Expectations. It was the first great exhibition to be held in Hyde Park. Prince Albert's huge project, building the Crystal Palace and inviting countries from all over the world to submit the best of the best of the best of their country to be exhibited in London. Scores of people flocked to Hyde Park to see what it is that had been produced by the world's great countries and economies and creatives. And I think of this as being such a fabulous expression of Victorian-era nation branding. Each nation deciding what would show the world that they were some of the leaders in this huge wave of technological progress that was sweeping the region. For some of them, it was a bit challenging. Italy wasn't yet united. The German states were not yet united. The Americans had a great difficulty getting their stuff from the United States over to London on time. So a huge section of the US America exhibit remained only half full upon the opening day when the Great Exhibition opened in 1851. But the rooms were just filled with examples of what it was that a nation felt was most important to present as its brand of itself. There was Swiss cheese and Swiss clocks, there were Italian sculptures, there were French linens and laces, exotic sorts of fruits and spices, California gold, and I'm embarrassed to say American revolvers, all featured as being the great creations of these countries. Now, I have my background at Google, YouTube, and Facebook in the digital world. And when I think today about nation branding and what it is to brand a place or a country or a city, it's the polar opposite of the Great Exhibition of 1851. Because everything that was represented in this glorious space in Hyde Park was about the top down. It was the country level deciding this is what we want to stand for, and this is what we will present. But so much of effective place branding in today's digital world is the bottom up. It's listening and hacking through the established assumptions of what it is that people love about a place to figure out what is actually going on in our societies. And so often that comes from the role that amateurism plays in our societies. Many of you will remember this famous New Yorker cartoon that encapsulates the excitement of amateur-driven social media. Back when I started at YouTube in 2007, and we were working on the YouTube CNN debates to allow anybody from anywhere to ask the candidates a question. They could be sitting in their backyard, they could be sitting at their kitchen counter, they could be in their bedroom, they could be on their way to work. As long as they had access to the phone and the technology, they could ask a question with equal weight to the journalist. And sometimes amateurism, I think, scares us on social media. But overall, amateurism in our space equals opportunity. Because the more voices you have to help generate those new creative sparks about what it is that a destination stands for, the more you can actually tap into the creative potential, not just of the individual or the team or the local population, but to everyone around the world who's ever visited your place. And the rise of the amateur as it relates to the travel sector began early on, in those early days when we first started to see social media relate to societal change. Some of you might remember, for example, Dancing Matt. Does anyone remember this guy who traveled the world in 2007, 8, 9 with these videos doing his amateurish, hokey, somewhat nerdy dance all around the world, and it became a thing. It became a phenomenon. Where was Dancing Matt going to land next? And over time, people actually started to want to join in on this movement. You know, you don't even have to be an expert dancer to do this dance. That's the point of something. So hard to cut that off. It's so much fun. It is seriously so much fun. The great thing about working in tech is you have an excuse to just sit and watch all these videos all the time over and over on loop. You know, and it's just, you just see the joy in people's eyes. I think, you know, it's so important, obviously, in our societies that we take time to listen to expert opinion, that we read the polls and we understand the analysis and we connect into the professionals, the writers, the journalists who really can help place our societies in context. But equally, you know, you get chills watching Dancing Matt out there doing his crazy little dance that anybody, no matter who you are, where you're from, you can have fun with this. You can enjoy this. You can relish this. And Dancing Matt over time literally started to put all of these places on the map where people, he had basically a following, you know, to see how it is that they could participate. I see actually the rise of the amateur in our space, in our field, as extremely exciting. The second piece that I wanted to explore today is how it is that the amateur changes the integrity of the message. You know, back in the era of nation branding more traditionally, especially when less people actually traveled, you could pop a fabulous message out there to the world and not necessarily get called out if the message didn't exactly map to the reality because it was a great narrative. I mean, I've got a background in PR. We know what a good narrative is. But, you know, in today's world, we're in a completely different space because amateurs call out the experts when they feel as though they're being messaged to and the message doesn't exactly map to reality. What is more, the democratization of travel means that there are people all over the world coming into different environments, being exposed to different environments. This is a fabulous proverb. From Ethiopia: to lie about a far country is easy. It used to be. And there are fabulous stories, especially in the early exploration of the globe from London, from the Royal Geographic Society, that when explorers would go out to faraway places, they would come back and they would start dressing in London in the traditional garb from the places they had just explored by way of proving the fact that they had actually been. In an era before photos and videos, how do you make the case, you know, that you've actually explored these faraway places? And so just marvelous, you know, images of these explorers in their, you know, traditional dress wandering up and down the Pall Mall to encourage people to actually buy into their story. But in today's world, integrity comes hand in hand with the rise of the amateur. There's actually no difference, really, between the two. The more people you have sharing information, the more people are cross-checking their information across all kinds of social media platforms. The less you can actually create a narrative and build it around the idea. And the more you need to create the narrative based on the reality of what is actually happening. And what's exciting is sometimes that actually opens up an opportunity, not only to shed light on what's incredible about the destination you're talking about, but also the areas that need work. A call to action to the global community. Look, we still haven't figured this out yet. It's going to take some time. Who out there of you who have been to this place can help partner with our local communities to solve problems? There's a whole new level of conversation right now that can go on at the international and national and local level of place branding. But it takes a lot more bravery to get there, because sometimes having that integrity in your place is going to admit those little, points of tension that historic nation branding has not been about. If you come from a country that doesn't do particularly good cheese, you're not going to bring it to the Great Exhibition. But in today's world, you can actually go out there and say, hey, we need a little bit of help. Who can help us to solve these problems? And I think finally, what I'm most excited about in today's version of nation building and branding as it comes from the digital world is the sheer optimism of this space. There's been countless theories that looking at and admiring a beautiful place or object, something that inspires you, actually makes you yourself feel like you're coming alive. And it's wonderful to think about how much this positive energy influences the future of our connected and digital societies. The world is not going to get less connected, it's only going to get more connected. And it's been so frustrating, especially as somebody who has my background in politics and government through the Facebook lens. It's so frustrating to see so many corners of our connected world really tainted by disagreements, by tearing apart of societies, by the failure to use the comment section in our social media channels to get along and instead to tear each other down. That's so frustrating. But in the world of travel, in the world of place branding, in the world of, dare I say, beautiful destinations, social media gives us some of the highest points of optimism, the best possible lens through which to see humanity, because we're connecting over places that inspire us. Either they inspire us naturally because they're beautiful and they're exciting and they're compelling, or they inspire us because we love them so much and we see they need help. And we're driven as societies to say, well, how can I help these people or these individuals or these ideas? I hope many of you in the room, but I know we come from all over the world, are familiar with the Humans of New York Facebook page, which is so wildly successful. But one of my favorite pieces of content from this page comes from Jordan. This photo is a photo of a mother and her son that was taken, they're both Syrian, that was taken just before the son heads to the United States of America to start a new life here. So his visa was just approved by the US government, he's on his way. And they're having a moment, taking a moment to talk to the creator behind the Humans of New York Facebook page. And I just wanted to read from the voice of this woman here, who again is the mother, what she has to say to the creator behind the page. She says, "I was an only child, but I had 11 children. I built a whole family. Every Friday, I'd cook for them at my house. I'd spend the whole day in my kitchen, and all of the grandchildren would come over, and the house would be filled with noise." The word family is a painful word for me now. The war scattered my children all over the world. They are in Syria, Lebanon, Germany, and Jordan. I love all my children, but this one here is my soul. He's always taken care of me. He's even raised his children to take care of me. His daughters are always asking if there's anything I need, just like their father. Tomorrow, He's leaving for a place called Memphis, Tennessee. I don't know what I'll do without him. I hope they'll let me come to Memphis too. Can you tell us anything about Memphis? Are there nice people there? I heard that it is a city of music. I love music. Now, that photo and that story received more than 200,000 likes, more than 16,000 shares, and more than 5,700 comments. And guess, on a Facebook page called Humans of New York, where those comments come from. Memphis, Tennessee. Scores and scores and scores of comments from Memphis, Tennessee. And they go something like this. We live in Memphis. You can come stay with us. We will love your family and welcome them with open arms. I think we're the nicest people in the world. I live in Memphis and I work in immigration law. Please let me know if you need help with anything. Welcome. Here is a photo of your new city at sunset along the Mississippi River. We are thankful to have you coming to Tennessee and embrace you with open arms. And then a few weeks later, a friend of mine had a conversation with him in Memphis last week. He's adjusting well and has good people around to help him transition into the city. Proud of my hometown. Now, I can hardly read this without, getting tears in my eyes, because this was the whole promise of the connected world, of social media, of digital strategy in the first place. And if it's not going to be politics, and it's not going to be government, and it's not going to be the CEOs and the companies that figure out how to leverage this space for the better, it's going to be this field, our field, the field of places and people coming together because they're inspired to see what it is that the world has to offer to make not only broader society a better place, but the individual more hopeful and more inspired and more fulfilled. And I'm absolutely thrilled to be part of this journey. Thank you.
Thank you, Elizabeth. I mean, that's one of the most inspiring sessions we've had at City Nation Place for quite a while, but actually is why I'm really into the topic as well. That's a really inspiring, positive view of all the great communications that are out there. If we switch to slide, I've seen one question, just to make it a little bit less positive, but I think we have to look at the other side too. How do you navigate the fake amateur or the pro trying to play themselves off as the amateur? Are there integrity tools we can use?
So that's a really good question. Actually, I would love to hear if this was somebody in the room. It'd be interesting at the next coffee break to hear how much of a problem this tends to be in your environments and where you're from. I think the most important thing when it comes to kind of amateur opinion is, generally speaking, the trolls tend to be fairly easy to spot. And so if you're running, it seems to me like this person might be running the social media communications, pages. What I would really do is work hard to start building a relationship with the people who tend to be your advocates on social media. Respond to their comments, like their stuff, ask them a follow-up question. Try to kind of get enough people, and it depends on how big you're talking. Obviously, if you're responsible for Brand USA, it's going to be more challenging than if you're responsible for a city, level brand, depending on the city. But I definitely think aiming to build the relationship with the people who are your advocates is useful. I also think that in large part the advocates do tend to outweigh anyhow the critics and the trolls. This is especially true, for example, in I've worked with the British monarchy and the royal households in Europe for a number of years, who always feel a little bit worried about the comments just appearing on their social media channels without being able to look at them first. Yep. And what they always notice is that, when the critics kind of come in, there tend to be, for every critic, there tends to be 10 people coming in and saying, oh, just go somewhere else. This is where we go to look at the Queen's hats. And so I think, sometimes kind of taking a look at that natural selection to see if that can help will work.
One of the topics that I mentioned earlier that's come up a lot in our research with the global delegates is the issue not about fake amateurs, but about fake news. So some of the stories that might come out about a country or a city, it tends to be more in the nation branding area, I think. It's coming from a voice of authority that is just plain wrong. Is it the same thing? Is it outsmarting negativity with more positivity? What do you think?
Yeah, huge, huge space. What I would say from my vantage point is get involved in following all of the current research that's being led about kind of putting together the plan for how social media companies need to address this space. So if you're not already, for example, take a look at what the Oxford Internet Institute is doing about the realm of fake news right now. They're providing direct advice back to the companies. Take a look at the Shorenstein Center at Harvard, which is working on training journalists to be better ambassadors in this space. Take a look at the authors of the Facebook post that said, and this is long after I left the company, but that actually said, that they are partnering with some other institutions to kind of figure out what the roadmap should be for fake news. Although that stems from the world of politics, it applies more broadly across the web. And if you start following some of these leading academic and journalistic institutions, you'll get an indication of where they're going in this space, because it still is early days to know how the social media response to fake news is going to play out.
Great, thank you. There's some really good advice there. Thank you very much, Elizabeth. And
thank you.